Good morning, good afternoon, and good night to all. Thank you so much for joining the Spiritist Talk series promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation every Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Today, I am really happy to be here and host this talk conducted by Jussara Korngold, who will be leading our live number 100. She'll be talking about the Spiritist journey in 1862. But before we proceed with today's talk, I would like to take a moment to just to remind us that the United States Spiritist Federation has this book based on today's talk, and it's available at the bookstore at the US spiritistbooks.us with a very special promotional price this month of $10. I would like to also remind everyone of the Initiation into Spiritism virtual class with a new lesson released weekly on Sundays. And as most of you may know, this course is really there to introduce the basic principles of Spiritism and was first published by Allan Kardec in 1857. If you're interested or know someone who could benefit from this course, take a moment to visit the page on the USSF website to access not only past classes, but also receive reminders by email. Today, we are here to hear from Jussara, but tomorrow, Sunday, May 8th, the lesson of that class is Blessed are those who mourn. Finally, you may see throughout our talk today that we have a QR code. If you enjoy this series of live talks and are able, please take a moment to donate so we have the means to develop new classes. Thank you so much for doing that. Now back to Jussara. Jussara, it is so good to have you here with us. Together with everyone who's watching the live, I want to give you a very warm welcome and we hope we're doing well. It is good to have you here to discuss specifically this book, Spiritist Journey in 1862. For everyone who has not read the book yet, please take a moment to think about that when Allan Kardec set out on his very historic journey in 1862, not even he could have foreseen the amazing, the immense growth of Spiritism in the country, in France. And that growth, which was inaugurated with the publication of the Spiritist book in Paris only 5 years beforehand. Just for context purpose, that time there was really no radio, nor even any other means of mass communication other than printed word. And it's really remarkable for us by any standard to see what happened at the time. And Jussara is going to tell us all about it. Jussara will also give some glimpses in the way that Allan Kardec thought, right? Some practical aspects of the early days of Spiritism, and also how Kardec, was able to overcome formidable odds and opposition. I am sure, like me, you're all eager to hear from Jussara. And before we start, I just wanted to formally introduce Jussara. Jussara Korngold is currently the General Secretary of the International Spiritist Council. She's the former president, and currently she serves as a vice president of the United States Spiritist Federation. She's also the founder and the president of the Spiritist Group of New York and the Spiritist Alliance for Books. Mrs. Korngold is fluent in Portuguese, English, French, and Spanish. Oh, goodness. Thank you, Jussara, for being here. And final reminder, if you have any comments or any questions, please do send to us using the chat function. Jussara will reserve time to address your comments and questions once she concludes her presentation. Jussara, please go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Marcia. So before anything, let me just greet everyone. Have a great good morning to everyone, or good afternoon, or good night, whatever you are. And for all those that are following us from also from the International Spiritist Council, that is uh, putting this live in their YouTube channel as well. For each and every one, we are very, very happy to be here and very grateful, especially because this is a day of celebration for us. We, like Marcia said, we are celebrating the 100 days, of doing this Spiritist Talk series on Saturdays. It's been over 2 years. We had a symposium and other things in between. That's why it's just 100, but over 2 years. And this year as well, we are celebrating the 160 years of the publication or the remarkable journey of Allan Kardec throughout the country, this country being France at the time, following up on the growth of Spiritism. It is so amazing when we think about that. As Marcia pointed out, we are talking only about 5 years later than the Spirit's book was released. At this point in time, there was only published the Spirit's book, What is Spiritism, and the Medium's book that we had, of course, Kardak first before publishing the Medium's book. He published in 58 the practical instructions about Spiritist manifestations. That then he made it the big one, the Medium's book. And we had a few numbers of, 3 years already, 4 years, or already of the Spiritist review. So we didn't even have the whole codification. From what we call the codification, that is the 5 books, we only had 2 at that point. And 5 years later, just for us to have an idea, I know that we have many people following us that it's from Brazil. Spiritism only started in Brazil in 1873 with the foundation of the first Spiritist group that is called Confucius in the state of Bahia. So we are talking that at this point, when Kardak started this journey, there was not even Spiritism mainly in the rest of the world, really only places and countries that were surrounding France at that time. So this is a historical journey, as we said, and Kardak, although he was so much engaged in so much engaged in knowing and understanding what was going on with Spiritism at that point in France, he could not have imagined that it was that big already in 5 years. So 5 years is a very short span of time for new ideas to take over, even if we are just talking about a country. And remember that there's only 5 years after the publication of the Spirit's book. And like Marcia said, that time we have to think about it. It's hard to think about even, 25 years ago, basically, where we had no internet, nothing. And that time there was no radio, no other means of mass communication, only the printed work. So we understand, and today, looking back at the backstages of everything that was happening in terms of this growth of Spiritism, we understand how important all of this was and how it's being making still today an impact on us. So this journey that we are going to talk about, of course, we talk about the 62 because it was the longest one, the ones that he visited more cities, as we are going to be seeing. But there were other trips that we are going to mention as well. He total had 5 trips in terms of spreading, not only spreading, but also to get to know, to be in places where he would be receiving correspondence about cases that he would then publish in the Spiritist Review. So he went to the countryside of France, Belgium. He went to Switzerland as well, just to spread the Spiritism. And this was the longest one, and the one that deserved a special publication as well. And the other trips he reported on the Spiritist Review of the corresponding years. So how was this journey? How was this decision of Kardak to go and to travel? So Kardak would take advantage of his own holidays, and the holidays that he would have in the Spiritist Society of Paris. We know that up to today in France, July, August, beginning of September, there are many places, many people actually go on vacation. Spiritist societies up to this day, normally they are closed during this month of the year. So Kardak would take advantage of this period of time to visit, the other places of interest and places that would be at this point already requiring from him more instructions and guidance, which we can only imagine having the codificator himself, available in your own country. Who wouldn't like to really take advantage of this position, of this situation, to hear direct from him and to get to know even more beyond the written words of what was the whole context of bringing about Spiritism. So mostly, like we said, there were invitations for him to go and to do that. And they say that it represents a natural consequence of the expansion and importance of Spiritism. Like we were talking about just right now, as soon as we started getting to know Spiritism. And we have to remember that the Spirit's book, during Kardak's life was published 15. We have 15 editions of the Spirit's book. The first edition, that was 1,500 books, it was sold out in 2 months. So it was spreading all around. And since the phenomena of table turning, people were actually getting in touch with the phenomena. Everything that was happening, remember, we always say that the phenomena always existed, right? But now people were looking for it with the table turning, and then with the instructions they were gathering. And after, with the publication of the Spirit's book, where Kardec comes with reason and tells everyone that it's not the tables there are talking, there are spirits. People were really curious at that point in time, not only in Europe, in this case in France, but even here in the US, where everything started. Actually, what led Kardec to start publishing the Spiritist Review beginning on January 1858 was because at this point here in the US, there were already 17 publications, monthly publications, talking about spiritual phenomena. So the spiritualist phenomena was growing and growing here in the US, and the interest was going through all places like it happened in Europe, and then with Kardec. So there was this natural expansion. And of course, the more we know, the more we want to know, the more we want to understand. And like I said, having the codificator himself, one spirit that is part of the group of the spirits that were working under the direction of the Spirit of Truth itself, here incarnate among us, the more we could benefit from that, the more we could hear from him, and gather even more from his wisdom and reason and loving way, because Kardec was actually a very loving person. This is what was happening, and that this is the reason why the small groups and the groups all over France and other countries were actually asking for his presence. So in the Spirit Review 1862, that we also have available in the bookstore of the United States Spiritist Federation, Kardak says, the report of the strip that mainly contains the instructions given by us to the several groups is too extensive to be published in the review, since it would almost require 2 volumes. We will publish a separate brochure in the same format as the review, and that can be attached to it if necessary. So Kardec understood the importance, the value, to have a special publication. And as we will see, for those that have already had the chance to flip the pages of the Spiritist Review that we have here in our hands, you will you'll see how precious this book is, even for today, with all the instructions and all the words, everything, all the exchanges that Kardec had. And we are very appreciative that he had this idea of having this in a separate publication, and not just, there among so many other articles of the 12 years that we have of the Spiritist Review published by Kardec himself. So the accounts of this book, like we said, we can find it in this book, Spiritist Journey. And Kardec wished to show not only the great growth of the French Spiritist movement, but also to bring the content of his lectures to the general public. So Kardec was already thinking about, everything that I'm going to be, all the gifts saying here in all those places, all these instructions will be one day useful. And little did he know that, 165 years later, we would be here talking, to the whole world, to this wonderful stream that we have of penetrating each and every home and spreading this message, that all these instructions would be useful, as it were actually at his time as well, for all those that he could not talk directly to, all those little places or places that he could not visit himself. After all, Kardec only lived it for 14 years after he started the codification, so there was not that much time for Kardec to be, in so many other places like we would like him to have been at this time. So some of the specific instructions that we find in this, in this journey and in the book, of course, is about, Kardec talks about the enemy maneuvers, the identifying the true followers, inclusion of all. Kardec was already talking about inclusion, cause for having enemies, The help of criticism in the propagation. Let us remember that the Act of Faith of Barcelona, when they burned on October 9 the books of some of the books of the codification, the Spiritist publications in a public square, that was a huge way of propagating the ideas of Spiritism. Talks about publications without quality, and when he talks about quality here, he's not talking about the way the book was put together in terms of paper, all that. He's talking about the content. Belief that Spiritism is the work of the devil. Prohibition of Moses to communicate with spirits. Detractors of Spiritism. The formation of the groups and external signs in meetings. So we will find many other topics that are included in his discourses, in his speeches, but some are the ones that we can already highlight, just for us to have an idea how rich it is and how important it was at that time to consolidate a good movement, this work of Kardak. The accounts of the other trips and the speeches, because like we said, it was not in 1862, there was 5 trips that Kardec had and speeches in all of that. The United States Spiritist Federation made a special publication that was recently released that is called Kardec's Select Speeches. So we will find other speeches from other opportunities that Kardec was talking to those groups. And again, flipping on those pages, reading those pages, we will feel as Kardec is talking to us today. So many of his guidance and advices and everything is so important for us nowadays as well. So let's talk about this specific travel. We will find variations in terms of the numbers, okay? So, but here we are talking about this 1862 journey. He traveled 2,079 miles. He visited 20 cities. We may find it in some publications 21. The duration of the trip, some publications will say more than 6 weeks, other will say almost 7 weeks. So just for you to be aware of that. And number of meetings around 50 as well, 50, 51. So what we have here is we'd like to invite you all to think about how hard it was to do all that. And we are talking about a very short extent of time for Kardec to have had all those meetings. He was working nonstop. He was taking advantage of all the time he had in each one of those places that he stopped to visit each and every group, to talk to each and every one of them. And as we can see here, if he visited 20 cities and he had 50 meetings, we are talking about, and as an average, at least 2 meetings in each city, and some of them even more than that. So again, the travel was done by animal or railroad traction. The paving of the roads and tracks was certainly nothing like that we have today. And the expenses, as Allan Kardec was keen to make clear, were on his own, contrary to what his opponent accused him of. The costs of the trips, as well as all other areas required to support our relationships with Spiritism, are covered by our own personal savings and resources. He publishes that in the Spiritist Review in November 1862. Kardec was so considerate with all that, that even places that he visited that were very humble, he sometimes, because in some places they would offer him banquets and, very nourishing ones, and that he would say that he didn't require any of that, because he didn't want other groups that could not offer the same thing to feel that they could not receive him, or embarrassed for not having the condition to receive him with, providing a banquet or something like this. So Kardec was very, very considered, and he would always send in correspondences before visiting those places, this kind of instructions. But we know that some of them actually prefer to go ahead and did that, but Kardec was also thinking about this. In 1860, Kardec started his travels. He visited a few cities like we can see here, Saint, Macon, Lyon, and Saint Etienne. In 61, he went to Lyon again, the same two cities, Saint-Saëns and Macon. Then in 62 is when, this big one that we said, 20 cities. And like we were mentioning before, when he was traveling, he could visit the places where he was receiving the reports of certain phenomena. So here in this journey, for instance, 1862, he was able to go to the places where there are some articles in the Spiritist Review that he talks about the possessed of foreseen. So we can read that all there. In 63, he also went to a place, and he saw the obsessed young man of Zimmerwald. He also went again to Morzine. In 64, he went to Bern, Switzerland. He went to Brussels and Antwerp in Belgium, and other places that he visited in passing as well. In 65, he also traveled again and visit other places. And again, he went to Switzerland. And in 1866, he traveled to other places where he was invited to. And in 1867, in spite of all the work that he was doing at that time, remember at that time he was working on the publication, to be ready to publish in 68 the book Genesis, and still continue with the work of the Spiritist Society of Paris, and the monthly release of the Spiritist Review, all of that, but he found time to take this journey as well. But so here is the question: what was Allan Kardec looking for on this trip? What was the main purpose for Kardec to start having this idea, besides the invitations, of course, because he had to feel that there was something that he could offer and learn as well, which was exactly that. He was not only thinking about giving instructions, but as he said, very humbly, to educate himself. How educate himself? Like we just mentioned, when he was with all the methodology of Kardak, in terms of how he put it in place, Spiritism, he the universal control, all the messages that he was receiving from different groups in the country, the questions that would be addressed to spirits through different mediums, different places, all of this. Kardec was always gathering information in following the science of observation, right? To put all of this together, to see if everything was correct, making sense. So he would be receiving communications about a certain kind of phenomena that was arising with a person in one place, and then he would receive the same kind of communication of the same kind of phenomena from different places. So he wanted to go there and to get to know these people, to get to know the circumstances that everything happened, to see for himself if that was an account that he would be considering as being a true account, because Kardec was very, very careful. It was not that he was naive and everyone that would be saying to him, "Oh, I saw a spirit." Okay. How was it? How was the conversation? What were the conditions? Were just one time? Or there was a repetition, like, the scientific methodology, all of this. And so he would be able to educate himself as well in terms of understanding about the conditions of how the phenomena was made. All of this happened. And this was one of the purpose of Kardec's journeys. He wants to see things with his own eyes. Up to that point, he was receiving correspondence. Now I want to see, I want to be part of it. I want to be part of all those seances that are occurring. I want to see this specific medium. I want to see this person that you say that is the possessed of Morzine. All of those things. Study local causes, favorable or unfavorable, to the progress of Spiritism, to probe opinions, to appreciate the effects of opposition and criticism, and to understand the judgment that it's made of certain works. So he was observing everything. All the conditions that would be more or less favorable for the, let's say, the spirit manifestation, for the communications, for, the spreading of this knowledge, the set of knowledge in the places he went. In the Spiritist Review, November 1864, there is an article that I recommend everyone to read. Spiritism is a Positive Science, and we hope to have this edition published already by the beginning of next year. We had it already translated. It's in the final stages of revision. I would certainly have the right to be proud of the reception that I have in the several centers that I visit, if I did not know that such testimonies are much less to the man than to Spiritism, of which I am just a humble representative and must be considered like a profession of faith, an adherence to our principles. That is how I see them as far as I'm concerned. So he talks about all his travels in this sense. That he understands that he's receiving a lot of praise, but he doesn't understand the praise to himself, but to Spiritism, understanding perfectly well that he, the man that named the book, the Spirit's book, was just a humble representative. And this is how Kardec placed it himself. And he continues on saying, if the trips that I do from time to time only had the objective of personal satisfaction, I would consider them useless and would abstain from traveling. So he had a goal in mind, an objective in mind, which was to instruct and to learn at the same time, to gather information, to make it, to sediment even more all the knowledge, the teachings, that where he was putting into his works, and of course the speeches that he would later on be giving as well. The objective of such visits is serious and exclusively in the interest of Spiritism. Hence, I do not seek ovations that I do not particularly like and that are not in my character. So Kardec was very circumspect. He was not looking for that. Let us remember that he was at this point, considered already more than a middle-aged man. He was in his 50s and 55, actually, at this point, even more. And for the time, he was considered to be an old man, a very respected scholar in his time, had published himself as a politically on les Arrivaux, over 20 publications, all of this. So he says, my greatest satisfaction is to meet sincere and devout friends, and whom we can understand one another without embarrassment, and mutually enlighten one another through friendly discussions to which each one of us take their own observations. So that was what was nourishing him as well, to see that everything that he believed, all his research, all his sleepless night, all the criticism that he was already receiving from adversaries and from people that were close to him, like the Spirit of Truth told him before, there was places where the seeds were growing, and that was what gave him a lot of happiness, a lot of joy in all of this. So what was Kardec looking for on those trips? And he said that they contribute to the strengthening of links of fraternity among followers. They also have the advantage of providing me with material of observation and study. There are never a waste to Spiritism. Sorry, I had to sneeze. And there are never ways to Spiritism. I collect material for the future history of Spiritism, authentic documents about the movement of the Spiritist ideas, the more or less favorable elements that Spiritism finds according to the places, the strength or weakness in the maneuvers of the adversaries, the means of fighting the latter, the zeal and devotion of its true defenders. So, like we were explaining before, this was the main purpose of everything. So, to learn, to observe, and to instruct according to his own possibilities. And what Kardec would say then, he said that there are those who work for the cause with courage, perseverance, abnegation, and selflessness without any personal intention. They seek the triumph of Spiritism by Spiritism, and not for the satisfaction of their personal self-love. There are those that prove that the Spiritism moral is not vain by their example, is struggling to justify this remarkable statement of a non-believer. With such a doctrine, one cannot be a Spiritist and not be a good person. So I think it's so important what Kardec just mentioned in this article, referring to what he was observing in terms of those that dedicated with courage and perseverance, those that understand not only at that time, but today, us. When we understand that we are not doing this just for ourselves. Of course, we are doing that for ourselves as well in terms of, personal growth. We want to grow. We want to be able to no longer be just surrounded by this negativity, the clouds, the dark clouds that surround us, but we want to liberate ourselves. We want to free ourselves from this old self and start, shining like we are destined to be shining. But also understanding that everything that we are doing is because we are receiving, this knowledge, because we are receiving assistance from the benefactors that are helping us, and we are doing that to help in this whole development of our planet, especially now going to a period of transition. So we are doing that on behalf of Christ, not even just the Spirit, it's Christ, to implement the kingdom of heaven in the sense of peace and harmony and brotherhood, all of that. And this is why, he says here that even non-believers, when they would be reading the statements in terms of what it is to be a spiritist, they would say, well, there is no way a spiritist will not be or will not be required to be a good person. And this is what we want to be. There isn't a spiritist center in which I did not find a more or less large number of such pioneers of the cause, of those trail blazers of the terrain, those tireless fighters that are sustained by a sincere and enlightened faith, by the conscience of a duty to carry out, who do not get discouraged before any difficulty. So, how much we would love to Kardak to be talking about this, about our own spiritist centers, ourselves, right? We want to be those trailblazers of the terrain, tireless fighters, having this sincere and enlightening faith, understanding that this is the commitment we made before this incarnation. Difficulties, there will be plenty. But we cannot dismay. We have to understand why we are doing that. What is the cause behind all that? And only reasoned faith will help us in this sense. If we really do understand that we are immortal beings, that we have this process of personal growth throughout the multiple lives, then we will be more capable of committing ourselves to all this work. But he mentions that there are also the naughty people. The naughty people of the cause, the impatient ones, those that can compromise it by not weighing the reach of their words and actions. Those that by a toothless zeal, by inopportune and premature ideas, unwillingly give ammunition to our adversaries. So here you see, he's not even saying that they are doing that on purpose, that they know exactly what they are doing and their intention is actually to affect the development and the credibility of Spiritism itself. But just because they are not, they're not considering, weighing all the things that they are doing, they present themselves many times as fanatics, and without weighing the consequences of words and actions, being astonished by things that may impact them, strike their eyes, but not necessarily going through to be if those are real things or people with good intention that are promoting this or that thing. We have to think about this even today. There are many sidetracks and in the Spiritism as well. Many people that think that if we go a different way, or if we introduce certain practices, or that Spiritism has to be taking political sides or religious sides or anything else. And sometimes we know that it may come from a good intention, but a good intention not necessarily is the right one. And considering that we are still spirits on, the third level of improve the hierarchy of the scale of spiritists or of spirits, And we understand that we do not know it all. We do not understand everything. And here we see what Kardak did. Again, his purpose was not only to be with those people that were, trying to establish Spiritism and living by this values, working especially on their morals, but also to learn and to see if everything that was happening was true, and all of that without precipitation. So then he said that come the others that only consider Spiritism superficially, not being touched in their hearts, giving by their own example a false idea of its results and moral tendencies. So it's when we use too much of the intellect and not necessarily put our hearts into it. And we know a lot, but we do very, very little, even for ourselves, even considering about our own improvement. So we are more inclined to the theories than necessarily to the practice. And he says that the biggest gap found by the sincere propagators of Spiritism, for they many times see the work that they did being undone by those that should second them. It is a demonstrated fact that Spiritism is more harmed by those that have a limited knowledge of Spiritism than by those that totally ignore it, and even by the declared enemies. There are other articles that Kardak have in the Spiritist Review, and that he talks about it, how much is people that declare themselves to be Spiritists can harm Spiritism, because they have, like he says, a very limited knowledge. They are more guided by their personal interest, by their own ideas, and not necessarily by what it is. And in this sense, they start, making contradictions and creating difficult situations to other more serious, more enlightened in terms of understanding the principles, and create a lot of problems for the development of Spiritism. And Kardec was very aware of that, how this could be damaging to Spiritism. It is noticeable that those that have limited knowledge generally have the pretension of understanding it more than those that acquired experience through serious studies. There is no way we can understand all of this without really immersing ourselves in this process of learning. Like we said, the learning is just the first step. Then it comes the harder one, which is to put in practice everything that we are learning. May the Spiritists not be discouraged, since this results from a time of transition in which we live. When you read that, you say, oh my God, he wrote that in 1864, and I'm really talking about it in 2022, and it is exactly what we are going through now. There has been a lot of challenge to Spiritists nowadays. So many distractions, so many questions, so many personal challenges, all the adversities that we are generally facing in the world, pandemia, wars, and everything that may lead us to question everything. But as Kardec says here, let's not be discouraged. It's part of this personal growth. Is part of this time of transition that we live. And he mentions that there are those that take those ideas upside down, that see them or want to accommodate them to their personal tastes. I say that this is, trying to make Spiritism as a golden calf. I will try to to only look at the aspects that accommodate my personal interest and not necessarily see how it is. And at this point, the important thing would be for us to say, okay, there are so many things that I do now and that I read and I understand that I should be doing, but I'm still not capable of doing that. Okay, so what? I was not capable of doing so many things that I'm doing today. So I just have to keep on going and not try to diminish them, to devalue them, because we are not capable of doing them right now. So to prevent the consequences of ignorance and false interpretations, it is necessary to take care of the propagation of the correct ideas, of forming educated followers whose growing number will neutralize the influence of the wrong ideas. What is the only way for us to counteract the negative aspect is to bringing each time more the positive, which is it's a struggle. That's why Kardec says here, don't be discouraged, because when you see that, you are like trying to make a hole on sand, and the sand keeps on blocking and coming again and filling up the hole, and you keep on digging and digging and digging, sometimes we do get discouraged. But here is what we have to remember: this work belongs to the Creator. This is a fatality. We will progress. We will move forward. So it's better for us to understand this now and to apply ourselves in not only in applying all this understanding, all this knowledge to improve ourselves, but spreading all of this. So instead of wasting too much time trying to counteract, to enter into these arguments or other things with people or movements that are, according to our understanding, are not doing things in the right way, we should use all this energy to work even harder to spread and to make the good way available to all. Otherwise, when we look back, we will see, what have we planted? Nothing. I was only so worried about removing what should not be there that I did not plant anything, and the terrain is empty. So this is not what we want to happen. And this is why Kardec is giving us this advice: work on the propagation of the correct ideas and form educated followers. This is the thought. Let us remember, Spiritism is this a set of knowledge, this philosophy that invites us to use reason above all. So that's why this process of education, this process of leading each and everyone to reason by themselves, is the only one that will make deep roots in each one of us. And when we will be seeing wrong ideas around, because we have this fertilized soil, we will expel everything that we see that is not in accordance to the good ideas. So my visit to the Spiritist Center, naturally, like he said before, had the main objective of helping the brothers and sisters in faith in their tasks. And this is what we wanted to bring to you today. Let's imagine that Kardec is talking to you today, to us today. He's here to renew our faith in what we are doing, and giving us, like he gave at that time, instructions that we may need in order to understand truly, in depth, is Spiritism as much as we can. And he said, I do not preach to the non believers. I never summon the public to catechize them. In a word, I do not make propaganda. I only attend followers' meetings in which my advices are sought and may be useful. I give those advices in goodwill to those that believe to need them, and abstain from giving them to those that believe to be enlightened enough to neglect them, which is exactly what we do nowadays. We don't go, and it's not our intention to go and start a process of brainwashing people. Our reason know that this is not the way it works unless you have this understanding that will make reasoned faith grow in you. There is no way, no one is going to convince you about otherwise. And again, it's always much more about actions than about the words that we say, about our examples, about how we are behaving in our ordinary lives that will make an impact in the lives of others. So we are not here to go and point fingers to those that that we may think are going in the wrong direction, even if they are damaging and affecting the reputation of Spiritism, but to use all our energy to bring about what is good. This is what Kardec is giving advice to us here. That is, in summary, ladies and gentlemen, the point of view under which Spiritism must be seen. In that cause, what was my role? It is not that of an inventor or a creator. As I saw, observed, studied the facts with care and perseverance. I coordinated them and deduced their consequences. That is all that I have done. So here, Kardec is giving us the recipe. How can we build this rooted faith? The faith there is not based on dogmas. It's about seeing, observing, studying with care and perseverance, deducing consequences. And with all this analysis, this methodology, we will be able, of course, to understand and to move forward in this sense. Such a task is nonetheless heavier than people may suppose. And if I have any merit, is that it is the fact that I am conscious of not having stepped back before any obstacle and any sacrifice. It will be the work of my life up to the last day, since before such an important objective, all of the material and personal interests fade away like points in infinity. Oh my God, he said that in 1864. March 31st, 1869, he died delivering the issue of the next month of the Spiritist Review. So he died working, serving the cause, knowing well at that point that his health was very fragile, but he didn't stop. He gave his life, like he said here. He was not looking at obstacles, at sacrifice, and he understood the importance to the end. So now we are here facing the same challenges that Kardak was facing at the time. Life is happening, things are difficult. There are so many adversities around us, but we have this knowledge, we have this understanding, and we have something that is a treasure and that can give us a little peace, at least in the turbulent times that we live. So let us do like he did, put aside our personal interests and material interests and just think about this infinity. So that was what we wanted to talk to you about, but we really would like to encourage everyone to go read the book. It's so rich, and read the other one as well, Kardec's selected speeches. We can learn so much. We can find so much guidance on the words of Kardak, and it will really give us a lot of energy, strength to keep going and to keep on, marching in this direction. We don't want to go backwards anymore. We just want to move forward, and bring more joy to our lives, more peace to our lives.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jussara. Thank you for the reflections you provided today. It indeed has been truly inspiration to hear about Kardec's Spiritist journey in 1862. At this moment, we are open for comments and questions from the audience. And we have our first one. Let me read. It says, why was there such demand for guidance and instruction about Spiritism and Spiritist phenomena in Europe at the time?
Well, that's such a great question. We have to remember that everything was very new, right? Phenomena, like we said, were happening, of course, since the beginning of times, but people, in different faiths, in the primordial times, we would be attributing them to, I don't know, manifestation of gods, or all of those things. But now we had it. More current, more people were coming forward about their experiences, and they were really curious about understanding what was going on. All of a sudden, they have this, scholar, Hippolyte Leon Denisard Rivail, that put together, the Spirit's book, with at that time in 57, with 501 questions. Then the second edition, the definite edition, that is 1019 questions. And at this point we would have over 5000 questions, I imagine. Because this 1019 multiply, right? The more we learn, the more we question, the more we want to know. So that's the reason why people would like to understand. And how we want to, even if I say, I give an answer to you that would be similar to an answer that someone would provide to me. I want the answer to me in particular, right? Okay, it
Yes.
may be a similar problem, but mine is different. So that's more or less what was happening. And of course, it was great. Like I said, they could reach to the source of all this knowledge and understand that was Kardec at that time. And like we mentioned here in the talk, the how Kardec were worried to spread the correct ideas. So he contributed to eliminate wrong interpretations. So
Mhm.
with his presence, with the continuous publications, not only of the books of codification, but others and the Spiritist Review, he was always addressing in a way of eliminating misconceptions that could arise. Like it normally happens when we start using our own interpretation for things.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jussara. Let me see if we have another question from the public. Hi, Yasko. Yasko Arakapa is saying, hi, Jussara. Such great material for reflection. It is worrisome to hear from Kardec that the biggest um, harm in spiritual propagation is done by those with partial knowledge of Spiritism. This is really important, Yasko. How are we doing today? are the courses and other activities sponsored by the various federations filling that gap?
Hi, Yasko. Good to hear from you. Okay, I hope you're enjoying, your new life. And I'll give the quick answer, and then we will talk about it. Yes, I think the federations are filling the gaps. What would be the problem there? The problem is that we all have our tastes, right? Our affinities
Mhm.
and our inclinations. There are so many things, so many good things happening now, with all these resources that we are having, in all different levels and and different things, varieties. And so people will look for what they feel inclined to look. So yes, we are having. I mean, this is the 100 lives. So people have already 100 lives to watch from the Spiritist United States Spiritist Federation. Not to mention the course that we start, initiation to Spiritism, and not to mention the work of the other state federations that we have in the United States Spiritist, in the United States, besides the United States Spiritist Federation, that is the national one. So only here in the U.S. we have already so much good material, and I think if people ask me, I will say look for these materials. Yeah, we may have our accents, we may have better orators than others, but the content of all of them have been very well done and developed. And it's what it saddens us, Yasko, is that really 160 years later, I'm not going to say 65 because of the Spears book. I'll say just that because of more of the dissemination. We are still going to be finding spiritists that will be the ones that is going to be the adversaries of Spiritism, not knowing it completely, mixing up with other things that may be just a passing fashion, and putting aside and losing track of what we want to do. All of us, we love shortcuts, right? But there is no shortcut in the process of evolvement. There are no, we do not evolve by leaps and bounds. It has to be through our hard work and commitment. But it's happening. It is happening, and we are all here today. We are all doing that. And the last thing that I would say is let us pay attention in ourselves, not to be one of those that will be, instead of promoting Spiritism, we will be the ones that, because of our personal interests, because of being naive or something, we may be going the other way around.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Jussara. Let's see if we have another question from the public. And we have another question, which is, love the question, by the way. Can we compare Kardec's travels to Paul Tarsus' travels?
In a way that they have the same objective, right? I think we can
Mhm.
compare that. We can say that, yeah, it's the same, and it's no different than so many other spiritists, and especially let's talk about the sower of stars, our dear Divaldo Franco, that this week, only 2 days ago, completed 95 years of age, and he's in our hearts. I mean, all the travels he made, and to um, spread spiritism, and now, even without leaving mention of the way, he's traveling through the wavelengths of the internet, and reaching us in our homes even more than before. So I would say yes, that the purpose was the same. The purpose was to bring love and enlightenment to people, and to be with them, and to show them your own learning and commitment. So in this sense, absolutely, we would say it's the same. In terms of how many, the length, the difficulties, well, like we said, it was not easy for Kardak as well.
Yes.
Paul would be laying on the ground on top of a stone as a pillow, but Kardak had it rough as well. And if we think about it, today we don't have it so bad, but we have other adversities, right? Like they did, and it's not an easy task as well. But in this sense, absolutely, we can say that it's the same, with the same purpose.
Yeah, I would say we're similar in the way that we're all pioneers, right, Jussara? But my goodness, they're not to compare, but to really inspire us to do the work, to the commitment, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's see if we have another question. And the question here is, Jussara, if we were to follow Allan Kardec's steps, is there a specific set of places or platforms we could leverage for our own spiritual awareness, guidance, and education?
I don't know if I understood exactly what the question, where the question wants me to go, but if not, Marcia, please help me in this sense. I would say that the steps are very clear. Um,
Mm-hmm.
First, we have to gather knowledge, to gather
Mm-hmm.
understanding. Okay, I think this is the first step. We do not go about, or we cannot do something well unless we know and understand that. I may know what a piano is, I may understand about the keys, I may even know a little bit of music, but and I can even go there and start stroking the keys, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to be a good pianist unless I really apply myself. There is a lot in this process, or even
Mm-hmm.
going to like it or appreciate it or use my full potential if I do not dedicate myself. So I think in Spiritism, the first step, which sometimes is not the one that arrives at first, because we understand that many people will look for um, spiritual assistance more when pain knocks at their door. So, okay, there is this first period that we call the call, right? That may come in the form of I feel empty, I need something
Mm-hmm.
else. And I feel a call that we can even say is like a call of love, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes the call is a bit more painful because of the
Mm-hmm.
circumstances we are living. But as soon as we go through this first step of establishing ourselves or looking for a established place where we can gather this knowledge and understanding, then is the process of enlightening ourselves in terms of of the knowledge we will gather, because it's only the knowledge, it's only the logic of this knowledge that will actually lead us to a committed action towards changing our behaviors. Oh,
Absolutely. I
that would
agree with you completely. Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
So without this knowledge, we will not be able, and even when we have the knowledge, and I
Mm-hmm.
know that this is the right way to do, I'm 100% convicted. Everyone already proved to me, and I proved to myself, but it's hard to go through this process. This is where the other steps will follow. But without this first one, I'm not saying read more than 10,000 pages that Kardec wrote. What I'm saying is at least the basic knowledge, the basic
Mm-hmm.
understanding, but keeps on investing on knowledge and understanding about this life, about the afterlife. We have this beautiful collection from the Spirit, Andrea Lewis, right? Enlightened Pages of Emmanuel, all those through the hands of Chico Xavier. The Enlightened Pages by the benefactor Joana de Angelis that invites us to this inner journey instead of going outside abroad to travel within ourselves so that we can really prepare the terrain for the good seeds to take root. So I would say that this is the first steps that we have to take in order to succeed firmly in this
Mhm.
incarnation, because of course it will happen one day, but I want to start happening now, right? Right, Marcia?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for your insight and telling us all what we need to do. Just knowledge, awareness, education, right? I think we have time for one more question, Jussara. Let's see if we have another one. So we do, and it says here, what is the main lesson this book brings to anyone who's working or considering to work in a Spiritist center?
Well, I can only answer this question on a very subjective way.
Hmm.
I'm sure that each and everyone that will get this book will have a different interpretation, because the book is not saying this is the main lesson. Okay, so to me, the main lesson it is. An invitation to charity in terms of spreading the light you already have.
Hmm.
So, regardless whether it's a little knowledge, a little understanding, you put your goodwill to service. We have this saying that. Those that have one eye can guide the blind, right? So we're not
Hmm.
saying that we can see fully, and sometimes I even say that this one eye is not even functioning properly, right? Need glasses or have some deficiencies, but you still it's blurry or whatever, but you can offer something. And I think this is when Kardec expresses himself by saying all the appreciation that people are demonstrated, I do not receive them to me personally, but to everything that the Spiritism represents, that brought to his life, and how he could share with each and every one. So this is what our personal journeys, and what is my
Yeah.
personal journey. Maybe I don't have the inclination, or people do not have the inclination to become speakers, or something like this. But like I said, it is much less about words than about actions. So let's be courageous, and let's do and plant even just one seed. It's one more better than none, right? And this is how I see this book, as a call to action,
Hmm.
regardless of our personal struggles and all the adversities that the surroundings may present to us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I think we're reached the end of our talk today, and I want to thank you, Jussara. Thanks everyone who was able to watch our live, this 100th live today, and for all of you who have been following us on our weekly Spiritist Talk series. I just want to say and remind everyone, next week, next Saturday, May 14th, again, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Don't miss our next live with Gustavo Silveira, who will be discussing God according to Spiritism. And with that, as we're about to end our live today, just as a reminder, every Sunday we do have the release, the weekly release of the initiation into Spiritism. And I would like to ask Jussara to close our talk today with a prayer. Would you do that, please?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Uh, Our prayer is a prayer of gratitude. First, let us think about Allan Kardec for all his work, for all his dedication, for having embracing, even facing so many adversities, putting in risk the reputation he had that he gathered from so many decades of services to his country as well. But when he found the truth, he did not hesitate and continue in this path and started a new journey for all of us. So thank you so much, Allan Kardec, for all your work and for your sweet spouse, Amélie Gabrielle Baudet, that we know worked with you all the time along the way. For all the spirits, all the benefactors that have been propitiating us these opportunities of being together, of learning, of growing, of sharing our pains, our victories, for our guardian angels, benefactors. And we ask our brother Jesus and our Heavenly Creator for more opportunities and strength to continue our personal journey towards this process of enlightenment through knowledge and love. So be it.
So be it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. Happy Mother's Day tomorrow, everywhere in the world. Thanks, everyone.